I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My title today is Shanghaied Cities, Preparation for the Asian Invasion. To Shanghai means to press into service, particularly the crew of a boat. But it can also mean to hijack, to appropriate the ship itself. And that is what I think is happening with the 15-minute cities. We have been sold out for the debt to China. Let's look at this. My town in Santa Cruz, California, has been commandeered by WEFfie YGL Gavin Newsom. And by WEFfie YGL, I mean World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. He has mandated our county to build tens of thousands of new units of housing. We've been given the illusion of choice. You can have high-density units downtown, or you can have them in every neighborhood. There's something called the builder's remedy, and that means that if we don't approve them fast enough to suit His Highness, that then the builders can come in and developers can override everything the city decides. They can go, I think it's 50% higher than we've allowed. And so now people are saying, well, if we allow 15 stories, that means they can go 25 stories. It is an earthquake zone, and so there are no buildings right now that are more than 3 to 5 stories. But lately, there have been springing up blocks upon blocks of cell block housing. These are luxury condos that rent from $3,000 to $6,000 a month, and they are 800 square feet with zero parking. Zero. No parking whatsoever. 70% of people in the United States want to live in single-family housing. I know everyone that I know is in that same category, but there's no one that I know who can live without a car. One of the casualties is my neighborhood food market, a little hippie place called Food Bin with the herb room. That's going to become 3,000 square feet of commercial space on the bottom and 50 units above it, which is a crazy thing in a little neighborhood. And again, no parking. They also have 27 acres that is prime land in between the downtown and the boardwalk, so right next to the ocean, and that is all going to become high-rises in order to fund a stadium that nobody wants in the first place. In the meantime, one of my favorite aerial teachers is leaving the area because she can't find housing. My dance teacher is out at the end of this month and can't find another place. It made me start wondering, with all of these new buildings sitting empty, who is going to be living there? And that's when I realized who is willing to live without a car in a high-rise that is 800 square feet and $3,000 to $6,000. I had been puzzling about what China was going to do with all those Treasury bills it's been amassing from the trade deficit. Because now there's not going to be any trade without tariffs, and the petrodollar has crashed and burned, and we're no longer the currency that needs to be used for oil. We're not even a good currency to keep for oil. Therefore, what will those Treasury bills buy? California real estate. Real estate somewhere in the U.S., in all of these places that are being burned out, wiped out with hurricanes, the sun and sand belts. In the meantime, all the YIMBY laws that California has passed to try to shoehorn in apartment buildings have failed. There is one that you can convert office buildings or parking lots or strip malls into apartments, hardly any takers. There's yes in God's backyard so that churches can use their extra parking because nobody's going there anymore into apartments. But no, people can turn their houses into duplexes. But only 140 have because there's so many regulations that make it hard for ordinary people to be able to do things like that. But now they want to say, oh, if you have an Airbnb, that's taking away housing. You can't do that so that you might still have available housing for when your family comes back. No, you have to rent it to someone you will never get rid of because the regulations are so renter-friendly and against homeowners. It's my policy to know what's going on, but not live in fear. Socio-spirituality is taking a hard look at the reality in the world while questioning the reality of the world. And so my real question here is, what are we going to do with these buildings when we take back our cities? Because part of my carrot plan is that we can use eminent domain for any of the properties within our borders. And we can issue the amount of dollars that it will take to buy them out from whoever's holding them. And then they turn into carrots. A debt to yourself means that you can issue the credit, and the credit can then come back to pay off the debt. So I'm not worried about this, but I think we should call their bluff before more of these monstrosities are built. And to do that, I think they should prove that the existing buildings are 50% occupied by people who already live in Santa Cruz, and that it is not just pulling people from another state or another continent. The good news is I no longer think an earthquake is how they're going to wipe out the rest of us, because they need something that will pulverize the people but leave the building standing. Here is Ice 9, thanks to Fadi Lama for the recommendation from The Killing Joke on what he sees happening. A small, inbred, highly unified, hereditary conjuring class over a mongrelized, discretized, and stupefied productive class that through its generational exposure to never-ending sorcery had finally been stamped and beaten and molded into a static and immutable caste. A caste consisting of a few 100 million climate crisis survivors who would be allowed to come into the future. Survivors of the wizardry spun around in ignorance of the Earth's axial precession. They were an unfortunate necessity whose sole purpose would be to drudge and toil and spend the entirety of their miserable lives satisfying the fickle pleasures of their conjuring overlords. Society would freeze and history no longer exist, as there would be no further changes or events of import worth remembering. All fruits of life, every value-added endeavor, each creative outcome, and the very joys of life itself were to be given over in totality to the grabbing and voracious hands of a never-satiated, conjuring aristocracy. But that is not going to be our future. And to show how, this is breaking the spell, looking at those conjurers. And this is a playlist on socio-spirituality, because we need all the tricks we can get. Thank you for watching.